So to catch you up, for everybody who's not in Ireland, to catch you up is that basically there was a debate on, or like a discussion, I guess, or a segment, is a better word, on RT's Liveline. So RT's Liveline is, RT is our state broadcaster. Liveline is a show that they have at a certain time. I think it's like the drive time. It's one of the like big programs. Anyway, whatever time it's on it. On RT Radio 1. And Liveline used to be hosted by Joe Duffy. I think it is hosted by Joe Duffy again. But when I was on it recently enough, it was being hosted by somebody else because I think he was on holidays or something, or he was on a break. So Liveline is a phone-in show essentially, and people phone in, and it's kind of like an Irish like cultural phenomenon, or like a meme, I guess. Oh, it's on from 1:30 to 2:45. Thanks, Greg. So it's like, I would say, you know, it has been memed in the past, like the whole talk to Joe, call Joe Duffy, and like people be like, if they want to complain about anything, they'll say, I'm going to call Joe Duffy. So it is kind of a meme in itself, and then it's also just kind of like a cultural phenomenon that this show has like an insane amount of power and sort of prevalence in the country. So it's hosted by Joe Duffy, who is a, I don't know if older gentleman is the right word to describe him. I mean, I'd say he's in his 40s or 50s. He must be in his 50s at this point. And they basically have different conversations and different segments, and it's all about people, I suppose, expressing their opinion. But like, if I had to be honest with what I think it's more about people arguing. I think it falls into the very obvious like chat show trope of getting people riled up, I think. I was on it recently enough talking about the price of fertility treatment outside of the actual treatment, like fertility kind of supplements and stuff like that. And I remember like I was genuinely kind of worried. I considered dropping out because I was worried that like there would be a lot of negativity around that, and I was worried that people would just be very negative about what I had to say rather than positive. But actually that wasn't my experience, and the only interaction that I got on Twitter about it was positive. Didn't get a huge amount of traction or like, you know, interaction is the word I'm looking for around it. And so yeah, that's just a sort of summary on what Liveline is, I guess. Oh, he's in his, the host is in his 60s, Greg, thank you. I wouldn't say that it's like Jerry Springer, Mark. It would be much more, at least it would be presenting itself as much more reasoned than that. So it's a reasoned debate sort of place, if you know what I mean. Like, I would say that Liveline probably positions itself as very centrist and very neutral, and then it lets people ring in and express their really strong opinions in one way or the other. They do a little bit of massaging what they're looking for. I know that when I was on it, she was like, and do you think the government should step in and cover people's fertility supplements? And I was kind of like, that's a fierce loaded question, isn't it? And I wasn't prepared for. So I do feel like they do a little bit of massaging, but it's definitely like, it's nothing like Jerry Springer. It's not like that. It's not even like the debates that go on in America. Like, it wouldn't be as, I don't know, wildly end of the spectrum. But they have topics, people argue about them. Sometimes the topics are totally benign. Sometimes the topics are not totally benign, which is where we run into problems like we had here. And so this is a tweet from the Irish Times. Says RT's Liveline accused of facilitating hate speech against trans people. I don't think I'm going to be able to read this because I am not subscribed. Okay, so I can. Now, I'll skim this article and then we'll actually just listen to it, because I actually haven't listened to this yet. Dublin's Lord Mayor and leading human rights activists expressed anger at recent RTE programme which dealt with transgender issues. Lord Mayor Alison Gilliland said the subject was being... We have another female mayor. Hell yes. Sorry. Lord is not appropriate. Lord Mayor Alison Gillian said the subject was being played out in the most appalling, disgusting way on our national airwaves and in the name of public debate. What had taken place actually hinders and creates more division. Human rights activist said it's not the role of our national broadcaster to enable or encourage hate speech of any kind. If it comes up on the programme, I can understand, but that's allowed to crop up again and again, step too far. I believe it's important that senior management RT should look at that, blah, 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 blah. Right, so this is sort of the same conversation that was happening the whole way throughout the same-sex marriage thing. By thing, what do I mean? I mean vote. Referendum, that's the word I'm looking for. So we had a same-sex marriage referendum here in Ireland, and people, I'm going to make my camera bigger. We had a referendum on same-sex marriage here in Ireland, and basically the whole run-up to that referendum was like the airwaves were just completely all talking about this referendum, and there was lots of discussion, and there was lots of like really problematic sort of like things said in that time period on platforms like the radio. And so this is a very similar conversation we're kind of having now, and I just think that's interesting because I had a good conversation with my dad over the weekend, and this is why I actually wanted to talk about this, because I hadn't kept up with this. And then my dad at the weekend was like, listen, there's been this controversy, I want to know your take on it, because my dad is trying to understand these issues. And my dad is 80 something, 85, 80, no, he's not 85, 80 something. And he's a very progressive man, and he just wanted to understand what the issue was. And so I had a conversation with him about it, to be fair, not having listened to the piece yet, but I had a broader discussion with him around a lot of the talking points that come out of this. And he was like delighted in that he was like, thank you for explaining, etc. And he definitely saw the points that I was making. But again, didn't listen to it, so I actually want to listen to it now and see how bad it is, essentially. Greg, from what I recall, the issue came up again about trans women being still biologically stronger than women, and the issues, concerns people have with that. There were problematic opinions expressed around women's safety, trans women's sport, etc. That's a basic summary, so the audio will probably reveal more. Yeah, so that makes sense to me, because what my dad was asking me about was like about the sport thing, and what do I think as a woman and as a person who plays sport. And then basically we had a like really open-minded discussion, and yeah, I really enjoyed it. But yeah, then I wanted to be like, I wonder what exactly was going on. And so just before we listen to it, I will say that like I did see the reaction to it rather than listen to the actual thing, because I don't actually listen to radio. I did see the reaction to it, and I did see that Dublin Pride ended their partnership with RT over it. So Dublin Pride thought it was bad. And Dublin Pride Festival have worked with RT for years and years. I want to say 7, but it feels like it couldn't be. Oh, it's 3. Over the past 3 years, we've worked together with national broadcasters to increase positive representation of LGBTQ plus people on TV, radio and online, and to see the good work of so many people undone is saddening. The extreme and negates much the average date. So there must have been some bad shit said. I nearly don't want to like rebroadcast that, but I suppose that's how you counteract stuff, is by you have to listen to it before you can comment on it. Yeah, so they haven't commented on that yet. So that's, I mean, they're with Sky, Dublin Pride, so like I don't think they're going to be too hurt about it. As well as the Dublin radio stations FM 104 and Q102. Yeah. For it to happen during Pride Month is a bit of a kick in the teeth, really, isn't it? Okay, so TDs have called for Joe Duffy's Liveline to be brought before an Oireachtas committee. Holy fuck! Because it featured a debate over several days on whether the word woman should be erased from legislation and other contexts because of insistence by transgender activists that words like person are more inclusive. So my first thought about that is a lot of legislation, I'm pretty sure the Constitution, maybe not ours, but like, okay, maybe, sorry, what I'm trying to say is, maybe I'm wrong about legislation, but what I'm trying to say is, back in the day, the word man used to mean anyone. It used to be man or woman, if that makes sense. So it used to be like one man. Like the way Neil Armstrong said, one step for man. He didn't mean one step for men only. Like, women get booked, you didn't make it to the moon. I mean, we didn't, but it's not what he meant. So, like, language is always changing, first of all. And second of all, this is so fucking irrelevant. You know what I mean? It's only relevant in cases where you've gone too specific in certain legislation. And an example of that is in the abortion legislation after we voted in the referendum to legalize abortion. We didn't even vote to legalize abortion. We just voted to remove the constitutional blocking of abortion. And then in the legislation then that legalized abortion, it was the word woman was used, and it was brought up that there were some people affected by that. There were some trans men, that couldn't get an abortion when they accidentally got pregnant mid-transition. Because the legislation said woman. And the thing about a lot of the abortion legislation and stuff like that is that there are lots of hospitals that are doing anything they can to like avoid actually having to give abortions because they are run by nuns, or they're like, they still have religious belief or whatever, blah, 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 excuses. So, you know, progression in a formerly super religious country kind of happens pretty slowly. So first of all, I think this is kind of, it's not stupid, but I think it's maybe being misrepresentative. Like the way it says, because of insistence by transgender activists that words like person are more inclusive. Like, person is more inclusive. Like, why do we need to specify what laws? Like the fact that we had a referendum for gay marriage, that we had to take marriages between a man and a woman out of our constitution in order to allow us to be like marriages between two individuals. Like, what? Okay, like, don't put it in the first place. Do you know what I mean? I don't know. Geez, Greg, thank you for gifting subs. Louise, our proclamation says Irish men and Irish women, not that that's either here nor there. Okay, yeah, well, I mean, that's not great. Greg, a woman's place is in the home in the Irish Constitution. Yeah, I mean, you see, things change, right? And so we should change with them, and our legislation should presumably change with it. Exactly. Anyways, okay, let's see what was said on the programme.
Brian, Katrina is saying, what's the harm?
Can you hear that okay?
Why does it bother other people?
That's my fundamental thing, is why does it bother you? It doesn't affect you, why does it bother you? Like, there was a hospital that changed some fucking, like, they changed a sign, or they changed some, like, written leaflet or some shit, like something totally innocuous and, in my opinion, kind of irrelevant, to say people who breastfeed, was it? Or lactating people, rather than like lactating women. And I was like, I couldn't give a fuck about that. You know what I mean? And the amount of men that were madder about that than any women that I talked to was. Now, that's not to say some women weren't like, that's ridiculous, blah, blah, blah. But like, men were real into this discussion. A couple of them brought it up to me, and I was like, I don't want to talk about this. I just don't want to be I don't care. I do not care.
Exactly. That is the crux of my point.
We see no harm. Okay, Joe, imagine you're a sex abuse victim and you're incarcerated for a small petty crime like shoplifting, and you find out that in the cell next to you is a sex offender. How do you think you sleep that night, having that trauma being brought back to you? Imagine you're a rape survivor and you want to go to a rape crisis clinic, and the person who turns up to do your counselling is a male who identifies as a woman. How will that feel?
Okay, I'm going to pause it there and address that. So imagine you're a sex abuse victim and you're incarcerated for a small petty crime like shoplifting, and you find out that in the cell next to you is a sex offender. How do you think you'll sleep that night having that trauma being brought back to you? What the fuck has that got to do with the conversation? And if you are a sex abuse victim and you go to jail, I'm pretty sure it's tough shit. Like, I don't think you get a choice. And also, I don't see anybody out in the street protesting like prisoners' rights. Like, so it's suddenly, so that's all totally irrelevant. So we're getting rid of that. That's out the window. That's irrelevant. Imagine you're a rape survivor and you want to go to a rape crisis clinic, and the person who turns up to do your counselling is a male who identifies as a woman. How will that make you feel? Well, first of all, they are a woman. And second of all, just because somebody who was born a man, identifies as a woman does not mean they're a rapist. That sentence equates a transgender person with a rapist. Whether or not whether or not he realizes that that's what he's saying. That's what he's saying. Imagine you're a sex abuse victim and you get put into a cell beside a sex offender. Similarly, imagine that you are a victim of rape and you go in and somebody who is transgender is your therapist. That's what he's saying. He's making that false equivalence. Is that the right word? False. He's saying that transgender people are sex offenders. And this is one of the things I was saying to my dad, is that this whole narrative about men who want to be women, and excuse me for saying it that way, you know what I mean? This is how they phrase it. Being sex offenders or just waiting for the opportunity to get into a ladies' bathroom so they can assault someone is rooted in homophobia. It's the only acceptable way nowadays to be homophobic is to be transphobic. Boom, mic drop, moment of truth. It is. It's the only publicly still acceptable way to be homophobic is to be transphobic in the name of, I'm just protecting the women. I'm just saying, if there was a man who just wanted to put on a dress and go into a bathroom, then he could assault people. First of all, that tells me, if somebody genuinely makes that argument to me next time, I'm going to turn around to them and I'm going to say, so does that mean that all you're waiting for is a dress to go in and assault someone? Are you saying that the bathroom doors are magic? And because they have a little stick figure with the dress on them, that you as a man feel like you can't go in and rape anyone in there? Is that like their magic doors, are they? And all you're waiting for is the opportunity to put a dress on and go assault someone? Is that what you're saying? Because that is what you're saying. And then if that's not what you're saying, if you're not all men, then you're basically saying all queer men. You're saying it's homophobia. It's the age-old homophobic trope that where they used to say that people who were homosexual were like predators, or the jokes like backs to the wall, this sort of thing. Like, that's all homophobic, and this is all coming from that. Sorry, I'm like in a rant and I've fallen behind on the chat. Where are we? The problem is that Liveline really focused on super extreme cases bordering on transphobia. Yeah, I mean, this is the whole thing with the abortion debate, especially in America. Just as an example of something sort of similar but not the same. The abortion debate in America, people keep saying things like, "What if?" So you think abortion's okay? So you think that somebody should abort a baby at 8.5 months? Like, they're 2 days before birth and they should be allowed to be aborted. And it's like, that is literally ludicrous. That is the most extreme example you could get, and it is, first of all, not fucking happening, and it's definitely not happening on the regular, and it is not something, nobody has a 8-month viable healthy pregnancy and goes, actually I've changed my mind. That's not how that works. The only time there would ever be an end put to an 8-month-old fetus's life is if it was in an attempt to save the mother's life. That's it. Like, nobody's going, oh, I've actually suffered this pregnancy for 8 months and I've just changed my mind. Yeah, I've just changed my mind. So, yeah, this is just, that's a ridiculous. First of all, Brian is transphobic. End of story, Brian's transphobic. He thinks, he's also kind of fucking homophobic. He thinks that trans men, trans women, he thinks that people who were born male and who are transitioning into female are sex offenders. He's transphobic and he's homophobic. He can eat my shit. Okay, next bit.
At least address them by how they identify. You know how disrespectful it is
we're getting to the crux of the insanity here. We're talking about a rape victim, and the problem is that we're not calling them the person who's doing the counselling is by the right gender. We're forgetting completely about the victims here.
So this is a common thing that I've actually realised happens. People who want to make an argument against something that is generally understood they want to make an argument against trans people or gay people or whatever else, they bring rape into it. And they bring rape into it because rape is an incredibly emotive topic, and it's a societally accepted constant, I guess, that, well, no, it's not a constant, sorry. But it's a generally accepted thing in society that rape victims should be like, what's the word? That rape victims are, somebody, I guess, that we should protect, or, we should have empathy for and sympathy for, and they should, because obviously, that makes sense, right? The reason I said it's not a constant is because there is obviously a lot of people not believing victims, blah, 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 like it's not. But in the context of when somebody's trying to make an argument against the human rights of somebody else, they'll absolutely jump on the rape victim train. They'll be like, what about rape victims? Oh my God, you're going to do this. What about rape victims? How are rape victims about that? And I think that is reductive, and I think it is a distraction technique, because we're not actually talking about the issue. Like, he goes, okay, so we're getting to the crux of the insanity here. So first of all, he's saying that you referring to somebody by their correct pronouns is insanity. So that just tells you immediately that this isn't a good faith debate. And he's like, we're talking about a rape victim here, and apparently the real problem is that we're not calling the person doing the counselling the right gender. No, Brian, the real problem is that you're insinuating that a transgender person is a sex offender automatically. That's what you're saying. You're outright saying it, not even implying it. Outright saying it. That's the fucking problem. You're fucking transphobic. Words like chest feeder, people who menstruate, and gestator. Gestation. Oh yeah. I was like, what the fuck is a gestator? Are increasingly coming into use to replace woman in recent times. Many women find this objectionable. Some women find this objectionable. Like, I do think chest feeder is kind of stupid, just because not Stephen stupid. I think it's kind of offensive. And the reason I think it's offensive is because I have no tits. And if someone was like, are you going to chest feed? I'd be like, excuse you, do you have to point out my lack of tits in front of everyone? But you could just say, yeah, I get it. That one, I'm peeking a little bit on my mic. Am I? Will I turn it down a little bit? I think it was funny, I don't think it's funny. I think it makes sense in terms of where people don't have breasts. It does make sense, but I would be like, fuck off. Stop pointing out tiny tits. But the chest feeder thing, that was actually what it was. Sorry, it was chest feeder, I think, was the one I was talking about in the UK, where some random hospital in the UK changed it to chest feeding instead of breastfeeding, and all the men that I knew wanted to know my opinion on it, and I was like, I don't give a fuck. Like, chest feeder is actually not about trans issues, just FYI, Brian and all your transphobic mates. It's actually to the reasoning given for it was that there are women who have lost their breasts and had mastectomies. There are also obviously trans issues, but it wasn't just about that. It was actually to help women as well. As in, and by that I mean when people are like, what about the women? That's what I mean. It was also to help women. So, like, it wasn't just to help transgender people. It was also to help cis women who have no breasts for whatever reason. People who menstruate. I'm totally fine with that. I'm a person. I made the joke the other day that the fundamental thing about this is that men don't see women as people. So they're like, and some women don't see women as people. So they're like, don't call me a person. The fuck? Oh, God. So Patty Sue, I've seen your comment. I can't allow it, I don't think, because then the word rape will be allowed in my chat, but your comment's totally fine. And yeah, I agree with you. It's a stupid argument. Although the other words are already allowed. I'll allow it anyway. I'll allow it, and then I can remove the words again. So let's keep going.
Real victim.
This nightmare. This living hell.
Who else being harmed? Do you not think my daughter has a right to undress in her changing room gym without having a biological male expose his penis to her? Yes.
I'm sorry, did he say what I thought he did? He just said out of nowhere. So we've just finished this comment here. We're forgetting about the victims here, the real victims. He just goes, do you not think my daughter has the right to undress without a biological male exposing his penis to her? That's a fucking leap, isn't it? That's a leap. That's like... What's so interesting to me about this debate or fucking stance where you're like, all trans women are sex offenders, it's always the same people that say not all men. Riddle me that. Explain that one to me. Because I don't get it. It's the very same fucking people that will go, not all men though. Which is it? Because if you're saying that all it takes is a change of identification to become a sex offender, then what you're saying is yes, all men actually is what you're saying.
Brian, Katrina is saying, what's that?
So this is the... Did that start again? It did, sorry. So this is the frustration with me.
As a woman, how will that feel?
Imagine
you to do your
sorry, just need to find the spot again.
And the person who turns up to do your being brought back to you. Imagine
address them by how they.
And the problem is that we're not calling them the person who's doing the counselling is by the right gender. We're forgetting completely about the victims here, the real victims. And you'd be asking who else is being harmed. Do you not think my daughter has a right to undress in her changing room gym without having a biological male expose his penis to her? Yes or no?
See, I hate that, because when people want to have a discussion that undermines the validity of someone else's existence, they oversimplify the issue, or an issue. They oversimplify the issue to the point of ridiculousness, and then they say yes or no. So that's comparatively with the abortion debate. It's like, oh, so you like abortion, so you think babies should be aborted 2 days before birth, yes or no? And it's like, oh, that's not the same fucking question, mate. Not the same question at all. It's an oversimplification to the point of ludicrousness. And it's just plain wrong as well.
No, I can't.
Poor Catherine or Katrina is like, what? No. To be fair, I'd be fairly shocked by that absolute mad swing and a miss of logic there.
That's the issue. Do you know how much confidence it takes a lot of
let
confidence.
Katrina
Most
reply.
trans
Go
women.
ahead.
This is my frustration with radio shows that are chat shows. The presenter is there to facilitate two people going absolutely ham at each other. And normally it will be one person who's like relatively reasonable and one person who's absolutely not reasonable. And the presenter will present a very neutral and just debate facilitating presence, which is both a negative and a positive. And it's a negative in that they just allow people to say whatever the fuck they want on national radio. They're allowing this guy to say incredibly transphobic things on national radio with absolutely no call up, and the only person that can call him up is the other regular everyday person on the phone, who seems like a polite, normal individual, and is not going to rip him a new one, or like, you know, she's actually shocked by his rest. She's like, what? And so it's a negative in that context. It is a positive in the context of, like, I suppose, at least, and no offense Americans watching, at least we're not like America where the presenter is really biased. But I think sometimes our presenters err too much on the side of not getting involved because they actually present, I think, a bias when they do that. Because I think that as a presenter, you can't let somebody say incredibly problematic shit on your program and not challenge it and then claim that you haven't contributed to it, if that makes sense. Like, somebody would not be allowed to go on this and say these things about people of colour. It just wouldn't happen. There's no way, I would assume that the presenter would let somebody come on and say, well, what if you're a rape victim and then suddenly your counsellor's black? There's no fucking way that, surely, Jesus, I have some faith in the world, there's no presenter that would not challenge that and be like, that's really racist what you just said. But yeah, because it's kind of like societally acceptable, or at least more acceptable to use transphobia to be fucking homophobic, they're just like, and now Brian and Katrina both have your say, they're both equally valid. No, they're fucking not. Brian's been incredibly transphobic.
Most trans women are one of the most vulnerable aspects of the LGBT system. In America, they are the most targeted.
No, they're not.
When
no, they're not.
She's like trying to talk to him. She's trying to give him a reason. She's trying to say that transgender women are one of the most marginalized groups in society. Transgender women and men, excuse me. And he's just going, no. Thank you for your incredibly nuanced input into that, Brian.
Actually, they're actually the safest demographic.
They're actually the most what demographic?
Safest demographic. They're actually the safest demographic.
Evasive demographic?
Actually, they're actually the safest demographic. There have been 0 trans women killed in Ireland.
Based on what? What did he say evasive demographic? I can't understand what he's saying. There's been 0 trans women killed in Ireland. Based on what, Brian? Like, what research have you done? Like, okay, Brian, fucking doing like studies into transgender violence in Ireland in his spare time. Like, what's that based on, Brian? Thank you for gifting subs, Matthew.
Okay.
When you talk about trans women who have been killed, you're talking about sex workers in South America.
I actually, do you know what? I think I reach a level of sometimes of like outrage. Fucking Narnia. Where it's like, this is so fucking ridiculous that I'm actually past annoyed, past outraged, and I'm just like, oh, this doesn't actually bother me. Do you know what I mean? It's like when you max out. I presume you can max out on drugs, and you're just like, now I feel nothing. Oh God! Welcome, Saladin. Welcome, Fumi Chumi. Brian probably reads the obituaries every morning during breakfast.
Completely, but by the nature of the work. In Ireland, in Western civilization, and even in America, trans women have not been targeted. And if they have...
Over the weekend I read a figure, Brian, that the 300 transgender women were killed in the States last year.
Fair play to you, Joe. I take back my early criticism that you didn't get involved. I take that back. Fair play to you, Joe.
And that was up on the previous... Okay.
That's in the United States. Yeah, it's not here, is it? Yeah, but it could be here. We're lucky that it's not here. But like, it's this sort of rhetoric that leads to that. Brian, Yowl.
But I don't think that's true, though. I think you're talking about South America with Brazilian sex workers.
Like, what's South America got to do with it?
The USA, trans women are like targeted more often than any other person.
No, they're not. That's absolutely not.
Based on what, Brian? Like, she's not stating. Why can I not think of words today? God's long COVID has me bet. She's not like referencing where she's getting her vax from either. But like, you can't just go, nah, that's not true. Okay. Because if you're just going to go, that's not true, then what is the point of having a discussion? You're not there to have your mind changed. I read a really interesting thing the other day. I think it might have been a tweet or something. It wasn't exactly like an article or anything. But it said that you should ask somebody in a discussion or an argument or whatever you want to call it. You should ask the person what, and especially if they're saying to like show proof or whatever, you say to them, what could I say or what proof could I show you in order to change your mind? And if they can't come up with an answer to that, then they're not there to have a discussion. They're not there to have an open conversation. They won't change their mind. So there's no point having the discussion. It's just a waste of your time.
True, because when you look at the violence or death, it's nothing to do with transphobia. It's at the hands of partners and other typical that they much lower rates of violence than other. There's been zero trans women deaths in Ireland.
When you look at the deaths of transgender women in the US, it's not about transphobia. It was at the hands of their partners. Based on all of my research, me, Brian, the transphobe, all of my research into what makes people kill, specifically transgender people. What? Like, based on what, Brian? And then he goes, 0. I wonder, can I Google that without... How many Oh, no. I'm going to go transgender violence in Ireland stats. That's what I'm going to do. Transphobia in Ireland. God damn it. Ireland has among the highest rates of hate crime against people of African background and transgender people. Jesus. And transgender people in the EU, but no laws to address it. Oh, that took me Googling for about 5 seconds there, Brian. You can eat my hole. This is 2018. In a report launched today by the Chief Commissioner of the Irish Human Rights and Equality Commission, Ireland is shown to be seriously deficient in addressing hate crime. Now, there might have been hate crime legislation introduced since 2018. In fairness, this is just the first result that I clicked into. Link to report life cycle of a hate crime. In an earlier FRA study published in 2014, Ireland recorded the second highest rate of hate-motivated violence against transgender people in Europe. Holy fucking shit! In the 12 months prior to the survey, 13% of trans respondents in Ireland reported having been physically or sexually assaulted or threatened with violence and attacks, either wholly or partially motivated by transphobia, compared to the EU average of 8%. Fuck me, that's high. I'm not ignoring, by the way, up here where it says there are hate crimes against people of colour. I knew that was the thing. But we're trying to stay on topic. Holy fucking fuck. Excuse my French. So yeah. 13% of trans respondents in Ireland, and that's only trans respondents in Ireland, reported having been physically or sexually assaulted or threatened with violence in attacks either wholly or partially motivated by transphobia. 5% higher than the EU average. And then we have Brian on the radio going, there's nothing wrong with them. No one has ever said anything to a trans person. No one said a thing sideways to them. No one's ever looked at them sideways. So I'm very glad that is over and I don't have to listen to any more of that. That's great. So when I was talking to my dad about it, hang on, I'm just going to catch up on the chat. What really upsets me are the politicians who run their campaign and supporting the LGBTQ plus movement and don't do anything about it, or community. Yeah, I don't know if that's as big a thing here. I know that when Leo Varadkar, I think when he was Taoiseach or maybe when he was Taoiseach, I can't really remember, a couple of years ago anyway, like when we were having the gay marriage debate, our Leo Varadkar is gay and he's a prominent Irish politician. He was either Taoiseach or Taoiseach at the time. Taoiseach is number 1, Taoiseach is number 2. So Taoiseach's like our Prime Minister and Taoiseach is like our Vice Prime Minister. He I think he voted against it. He definitely spoke out against it in the media because he was like, you know, I think marriage between a man and a woman or whatever. And I was like, geez, like, say his boyfriend was fucking pissed off when we went home. So yeah, I don't know if like we have many politicians that openly say that they're running on LGBTQ plus issues and then don't do anything about it. I think it's more that they just don't acknowledge that they exist. The issues, that is. I did interview somebody on my podcast who is a counsellor. I think they're a county councillor. And they represent LGBTQ plus issues because they're part of the community themselves. So on the bright side. So I talked about this with my dad, and he was also talking about the let's see, he was talking about the sport thing. I don't know, does that come into this at all? Joe Duffy sounds wounded after Liveline's transgender discussion. Selflessness or self-inflicted injury? Radio review. Intolerance and insight collide when RT Radio 1's phone-in show debates a bitterly contested issue. Joe Duffy, I found it deeply disturbing after my 25 years of presenting here to be told that a debate on Liveline was incredibly irresponsible in the context of increasing transphobic and homophobic attacks. So what he's saying is he found it deeply disturbing that he was criticised. That's a big yikes, my man. In his broadcasting persona, Joe Duffy may be many things: inquisitive, provocative, you're telling me, hammy, maudlin. But he's rarely given to self-pity. When I teach my students to write online articles, I always tell them not to use words that people may not immediately know what they mean. But that's just my students, I guess. So one of the many noticeable moments on Monday's Liveline comes when Duffy sends a distinctly wounded note as he discusses criticism of the discussions he has been hosting about transgender issues. I really hate when news gets meta like this. Like, I don't really... Anyway, I found it deeply disturbing, blah, blah, blah. I just read that out. The presenter says, referring to a statement from the Irish Council of Civil Liberties, for adding that the censuring, he's not being censored, if that's what that means. Censuring, hang on. Censuring. Does censuring. Censure. Express severe disapproval of someone or something, especially in a formal statement. Okay, wow, I misunderstood the meaning of censure. It's why you shouldn't fucking use it. You should definitely not use words that could be, like, that sounds like that means censorship. So, you shouldn't use that fucking word in that context in case you confuse the audience. Anyway, was insulting to his program staff, and not even in case you confuse the audience, but if people read that and think that that means censorship and agree with it, they'll be like, yeah, it was censorship, even though it doesn't actually mean censorship. Anyway, was insulting to his program staff and indeed his listeners. Oh, I don't think so. I don't think criticism can mean insulting to your program staff, frankly. Insulted he may be, but Duffy can hardly be surprised that the subject should provoke a strong reaction, culminating in Dublin Pride's decision to sever its media partnership with RTE and posted at Liveline. Triggering and extremely harmful content. After all, transgender rights have become a bitterly contested frontline in the culture wars elsewhere. I despise the culture war comment or terminology. With Republican-controlled states in the US passing anti-trans laws and closer to home, I feel like I'm reading out for class, the author J.K. Rowling facing fierce online responses to her transphobic views. I added the word transphobic. They didn't. They should have. So delving into this matter takes a brave person. Delving into this matter takes a brave person. Does it? A brave person? A brave person? So you're fine to use person in that context, eh? Or at least someone unafraid of generating headline-grabbing controversy. Either way, Duffy is well qualified. Yeah, I mean. Thank you so much for gifting subs, Mark. The discussion starts last week where blah, blah, blah. Seemingly for being opposed to gender-neutral language in updated maternity protection legislation. Yeah, I don't give a fuck about this. Duffy keeps the matter going Friday into Monday, by which the stage conversation is really humming and unsettling. Yeah, don't keep it going over the weekend. There's your first solution. Because the longer it goes on, the more outrageous people start to say shit. Brian is angry at the idea of dropping the word mother in the legislation. The only person who can be called a woman now is a male who wants to identify as a woman. That's not true. Later, when Katrina, who identifies as non-binary, says there was assigned female birth, Brian dismisses the term as nonsensical. Yeah, why does Brian give a fuck what anyone else wants to do? Brian makes his points aggressively, which he did, although he is, by many standards, liberal in his attitudes. What fucking liberals are you talking to? He thinks all transgender people are perverts, and that's totally based on homophobia. I don't give a fuck. He's happy that his teenage daughter is lesbian, as she can avoid dating misogynistic men. What? So Brian hates men then? Is that the issue? Brian hates men. Which, I'm kind of bored with. No, he doesn't. So Brian hates men. That's his issue. And that's why he's like, men are going to want to dress up as women and we can't trust them because he hates men. Equally, however, he fulminates. What the fuck? Talk about an Irish Times article. He fulminates at the mild-mannered Katrina missing the iFada. Another West Brit thing about trans women in certain spaces. Does my daughter have the right to undress in a changing room without having a biological male expose his penis to her? She absolutely does, but people who are male are not going to go in and just expose themselves to her. People who are identify as female are not going to go in and show their penis to her. Also, have you, just out of curiosity, have you never brought your daughter into a male changing room? Because I grew up in a single parent household with two very active parents, which meant that when I was staying alone in my dad's house, my dad, when I was young, had to bring me to men-only spaces. So, when I got to a certain age, I could go into my own changing room and stuff. But when I was really young, he couldn't do that. So I just think we're nearly going backwards in how we're treating the gender divide. It's just like, relax. Katrina sounds intimidated by this vehemence, great word, underlining their point about the vulnerability of trans people. Brian responds, there have been zero killing of trans women in Ireland based on his extensive research on the topic, adding, you get the impression some people wish they were. Oh yes, marginalised people always wish they were more fucking marginalised. That's the real problem here, is that people, marginalised groups in Ireland just wish they were more marginalised. This crosses a line and prompts an anguished rebuttal from Duffy. Okay, at least he came back in there. Otherwise, the host takes a light touch approach to the conversation beyond asking, what's the harm in expanding trans rights? What's the harm? Why's it bother the people? There's your problem. If Brian's contributions are disturbing, they equally come across as self-defeatingly strident. No idea what they mean by that. By the same token, Lorian, the mother of a trans teenage boy, is a more sympathetic presence, noting that she's had to change her own language. She pleads for understanding, becoming more inclusive in languages, not excluding anyone. Katrina, meanwhile, suggests there's not enough education going both ways. Ain't that the fucking truth? This point is also made by another caller, Colette, albeit from the opposite perspective. She says there's no evidence that gender identity exists, while conceding that it feels very real for people. So is Colette saying that gender is a social construct and utter nonsense? Because I'm on board with that. Absolutely. Because gender is a societal construct. Like the way that Westerners express gender, or are expected to express gender, is totally different to other cultures. Like, for example, off the top of my head, India. I'm pretty sure I read something that said that there's different gender expression. And then I think I read something as well about, I really should look this up, that Native Americans have different ways of expressing gender as well. And they also have two-spirit people, which are essentially people who identify with both genders. So yeah, I would sort of agree with her there if she's saying what I think she's saying. But Colette, who is respectful and articulate, which apparently you didn't have to be to engage in this debate, is uneasy that an orthodoxy around the issue shuts down conversation. I don't know what that means. I respect people who do subscribe to gender identity theory, but we must listen to people who have different perspectives. Yes, I would agree with that. What's orthodoxy mean? The quality or state of being orthodox. Cool, thanks. That's really helpful. An orthodox belief or practice, capitalized. Eastern Orthodox Christianity or Orthodox Judaism. Okay, so that's not helpful, but it says here, orthodoxy is adherence to correct or accepted creeds. So that makes sense now in the context. Oh, I have the wrong article open. So it is she's uneasy that adherence to correct or accepted creeds would shut down conversation. Right, okay. Colette's argument doesn't convince Nico, but they exchange points respectfully. Tellingly, Nico notes this is the norm with most in-person encounters. And I would agree with that as well. I've only met people with hateful dialogue online. Ain't that the truth? I've definitely met people who repeat kind of hateful talking points, but as soon as they're called out and if they sort of realise, or as soon as it's highlighted to them, they sort of realise that what they're saying is harmful. And like people who talk, I've found the people who talk about it in public or like face to face or like in person are more willing to have that discussion and have their minds changed, rather than the lad who's like ringing in being like, no, that's not true. That's actually not true. No. Based on my extensive research, such perspective moments may bolster Duffy's decision to move the trans issue from the toxic sphere of social media to the slightly more civil forum, that's not true, of a radio phone-in. It's not slightly, I would argue it is not necessarily more civil. Slightly is the right word, but like, I don't even know. Excuse me. Their kerfuffle ends in a stalemate that affords some solace to all sides. Dublin Pride's disquiet is forcefully expressed. RTE can claim its editorial mandate remains uncompromised, and Duffy might feel his coverage advances the case for inclusivity. I mean, he might, but he let a guy go on the radio and say that all transgender people are sex offenders. So, and rapists. So, like, he also let a guy go on the radio and undermine and minimise violence against transgender people in Ireland by saying, oh, no one's been killed yet. Despite the fact we have the highest incidences of violence against transgender people in Europe. But it's fine because Brian thinks it's fine because no one's dead yet. Bastard. While the host states the powers that be haven't told him to stop covering the subject, the next day sees him move on. Well, because he's already covered for 5 fucking days. It's about time. This seems less like a cancel culture induced retreat than a recognition that the topic has run its course on the show. Yeah, it has run its course. But also, this isn't about cancel culture. I kind of hate when finger is pointed at cancel culture for people legitimately expressing discontent with something that somebody did that further marginalized a marginalized group. Like, if somebody went on the radio and was like defending slavery, it wouldn't be cancel culture to be like, you shouldn't air that shit in the radio. Of course, the wider debate of trans rights remains deeply divisive and for trans people offensive too, though how much of this will be heard in the air is another matter. Is there anything else interesting here? Okay, we've moved on to the housing crisis. Okay. Taoiseach urges sensitivity on transgender issues after Liveline controversy. Oh, the Taoiseach. Oh no, I keep forgetting that Leo Varadkar's not the Taoiseach. Because it would be Leo Varadkar sticking up for the LGBTQ plus community. Good for him. But he's no longer the Taoiseach. I totally forgot. Taoiseach Micheál Martin has called for sensitive and tolerant discussion about transgender issues as he highlighted the importance of acceptance for transgender people following the decision by Dublin Pride to sever its ties with RTE over a Liveline discussion on the matter. It's a very challenging journey for a person and everyone must recognise that. We must work collectively to make the debate, just like we did prior to marriage equality, a societal-wide debate that unites people as a vote by gender. RTE defended its handling of the issue and said in a statement on Wednesday that it was disappointed by Dublin Pride's decision to end their media partnership would in line with the statutory obligation to respond to any formal complaints. That's such a cop-out, because who's going to bother their whole writing a formal complaint? Okay. Meanwhile, Tánaiste Leo Varadkar said a lot of the members of the transgender community were very upset by the discussion and urged sensitivity and inclusion when debating the issue. The only thing I would say that is, these are very sensitive issues, they're very personal issues. We should talk about them and debate them. But if we were talking about issues that relate to trans people or any minority group, it's important that they're part of the debate and part of the conversation. They felt they were left out, and if a mistake was made, I think that was a mistake. Good fence sitting there, Leo. Well done. You're literally the only, as far as I'm aware, you're not the only openly gay politician. Catherine Zappone is also openly gay, but good fence sitting. That's real good fence sitting. RT defends Liveline as Dublin Pride ends media partnership. Broadcaster says sorry to people hurt, but that is the nature of the phone-in show. You fucking sensitive fucks. You sensitive little snowflakes. That's the problem with phone-in shows. I mean, they're not wrong, but it's the problem with phone-in shows. And I need to subscribe now before I can read that, so never mind. Okay, so moving on then to an opinion piece, which is always going to be good, isn't it? It's always going to be good. The opinion pieces. Alison O'Connor, we can have a rational discussion and still protect trans people. We can, but we don't. more often than not, we don't. This bullying and utterly totalitarian attachment to a particular ideology was always going to end badly. So that one sentence tells me that Alison O'Connor ain't on the side of trans people. Not in a million fucking years. What a terrible pity it came to this. Discussions not being had for entirely wrong reasons, festering away for a long time, bursting onto the national stage. The repercussions are really unfortunate. Really, has this discussion been festering away for a really long time? The trans debate, like the gay agenda, launched on the national talking shop that is Liveline. The RTE programme devoted days to this topic, so highly controversial that in recent years to raise concerns in any way would lead to immediate accusations of transphobia. Incorrect. It is the way in which you raise concerns. The thing is that anybody raising concerns about the transgender debate is not raising concerns about the individuals for their benefit. They're not saying, God, I hope that the transition is handled well and the person is medically and mentally supported through it. No, they're like, what if a dude wants to put on a dress and go into the girls' jacks? That's the nature of the concerns. So, yeah, excuse me if I'm like, that's transphobic. Excuse me for assuming that you saying transphobic things is transphobic. This bullying and utterly totalitarian attachment to a particular ideology was always going to end badly. The surprise is that it did not happen sooner. Well, we were too busy saying really offensive things about gay people and saying that really offensive things about women. We've been busy, you know. We first of all had to argue about the right of gay people to get married, to adopt families. Then we had to argue about the right of women to control their own bodies, whether they should be forced to have babies or whether they're all fucking murderers. And so we've been busy. So now we're getting to the trans debate. Sorry, I've fallen a bit behind on chat. Keep it coming, and I'll keep up with it better. Arising from this on Tuesday evening, Dublin Pride, yeah, blah blah blah. We know that. Blah, 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 blah. This was all kicked off by a protest at the National Women's Council AGM last Thursday week. A group called the Countess had protested outside and later told Joe Duffy they'd been denied entry to the meeting. What? As it happens, I was inside the earlier part of that meeting chairing a discussion on what we might expect in any debate ahead of the Women in the Home referendum due to be held soon. Yeah, you heard that correctly. We're having a fucking referendum to take out the fact that it says in our constitution a woman's place is in the fucking home. You heard that. Realistically, you should be able to change nonsense in your constitution quicker rather than having a referendum anyway. Part of Liveline discussion centred around the word woman being removed through amendments from the Maternity Protection Act 1994. It is being amended to ensure it extends certain rights that already exist to trans people. I don't see the problem with that because it doesn't take away my rights. It just offers them to more fucking people. In April, the government approved the drafting of a work-life balance provisions bill. As part of that, apparently, legislative anomalies that had been identified in other acts needed to be addressed. Do you know what they should have done? They should have just fucking amended them without saying shit. The Maternity Protection Act does not need to be voted on because that's not how our legislation works. You need to vote on changes to the Constitution, yeah, so we have to vote on the stupid fucking thing that says women are women's place in the home. But sorry, I was like, oh god, people haven't chatted for ages. Am I offline? Thank you for sending a chat, Matthew. Nachoholic, welcome. Maybe my chat was just paused for a minute. So they should have just changed it and fucking said nothing. If you take a look at these proposed changes, you will see the reasons for concern. Oh, will I, friend? Here are a few of them. The replacement of woman with person. That doesn't bother me. I don't see any concern there. Or a word importing the feminine gender shall be read as also importing the masculine gender. Okay. Or, for the avoidance of doubt, woman is being substituted for gender-neutral terms such as person. See, I am not bothered by that because I think women are people. What do you have to say to that, Caroline? Is that Caroline wrote this? Alison. What do you have to say to that? I'm not offended that it says person instead of woman, because I think women are people. Patty Sue Morrison, does it really state in the Irish Constitution that a woman's place is in the home? Or are you just being sarcastic? No, I'm pretty sure it does, because we're having a referendum. Woman in the home referendum. Excuse me. Yeah, so we want to insert a new clause into Article 40 to refer explicitly to gender equality and non-discrimination. Delete and replace the text of Article 4.12, which states that a woman's place is in the home, with language that is not gender specific and obliges the state to take reasonable measures to support care within the home and wider community. Maybe it doesn't say a woman's place is in the home. What's the original wording? Woman. Okay, it's Article 41.2. Article. God damn it. Article 4.2, Irish Constitution wording. I don't know what happened there. Am I still streaming? Why is my... that's what I did there. Okay. Sorry, we're getting distracted. We'll get back on track in 2 seconds. Article 41.2 states, in particular, the state recognises that by her life within the home, woman gives to the state a support without which the common good cannot be achieved. The state shall therefore endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to neglect of their duties in the home. Okay, so it doesn't say that a woman's place is in the home, but it says that by women staying home, they support the state, and the state should support them to stay at home, but it's gendered language and says that it doesn't allow for the other parent to stay home. So they want to change it to be parents or people or whatever else. And I think that makes more sense, because like mothers endeavour to ensure that mothers shall not be obliged by economic necessity to engage in labour to the neglect of their duties in the home. Anyway, excuse me. Have you... Kirks sent a link to the Irish statute book and said, found one result for the word woman and 199 results for the word employee. That's funny. In the Maternity Protection Act. Wow. Have you watched the movie Lincoln? Seeing the hate in the faces of white men about women voting is so shocking as heck. No, I'm actually not interested in watching that. Not in a million fucking years. Okay. Who came up with this nonsense? You see, first of all, whose quote is that, right? So that's a writer quoting herself. When I'm teaching my students, I tell them not to do that. In fact, if my students quote themselves in their own article, they get reported for plagiarism to the to the school. So, you know, standards. Who came up with this nonsense? Nonsense is a very particular word. It's not exactly a very neutral word there, is it, Alison? Have Irish women as a gender have not had enough issues over the decades without this attempt to banish us from laws governing women giving birth? What? I wonder, is this rooted in misandry, the mistrust and dislike of men? Because I jokingly participate in misandry, but I actually wonder if this is rooted in misandry. So you've not only got homophobia sort of playing into it, but maybe you have misandry. That's why people are so bothered about trans women and they're not bothered about trans men for some reason. Because they don't trust cis men. So they assume that you can't trust a trans woman because she was once a cis man. Or once, yeah, no, she wasn't once you know what I mean? She's born a man. You couldn't make it up. On a practical and crucial level, how can you advocate for women if our gender is written out of this legislation? Because women are people. Again, I can't repeat it enough. But lately this week, the National Women's Council came out with the clarification that it had always advocated for the word woman or women to be retained and included in policy, blah, 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 blah. Blah, blah. In its statement, it mentioned as an example the screening service Cervical Check. In that instance, it advocated for the word women being included in screening literature, along with transgender men, intersex and non-binary people with a cervix to come forward for a smear test. What's wrong with that? As it happens, Cervical Check currently uses the term women and people with a cervix, which seems entirely appropriate. You're fine with that? Like, what? Pick a lane. Trans people have exceptionally different lives, offering and suffering horrible violence and discrimination. They do not deserve more hurt and stigmatization. Absolutely. We have a duty to further understand their world. Tragically and ironically, they've been further victimized by those who stand guard stringently. Wait, no, hang on. How could anyone advocate for inclusiveness and equality and not see the damage done by not using women in these instances? What women have gained we must hold dearly. Sadly, this applies all the ways to the basics of our very identity. When she says we have a duty to further understand their world, does she mean trans people or women? Tragically and ironically, they've been further victimised by those who stand guard stringently and oftentimes viciously over any effort to raise a discussion about certain issues, which I would argue your article is doing. Needless to say, the online aspect is particularly aggressive, of course. At the height of it this week, I received an interesting text on the matter from a national politician, humble brag, saying a number of colleagues in Leinster House are also concerned about the removal of the word woman and other issues, but we're afraid of getting cancelled. If certain groups, there we go, take a set against you, they can literally take you out and end your career. There wasn't this much fear in the 8th Amendment, and that is saying something. Interesting. So what that says to me is that there's a lot of homophobic, transphobic chat going on in Leinster House, and this person, who I can fucking guarantee you was a white man, is like, we're afraid of getting cancelled because the gays can take us out and end our career. There wasn't this much fear in the 8th Amendment. And that is saying something, because women are fucking gobshites. And sure, women can't cancel us. If women don't vote for us, we don't give a fuck. But we need the gays to vote for us. Is essentially what they're saying. It's a real pity that it was Pride Month when this issue, yeah, hell yeah. In the US this week, a report shows the number of trans people who identify as transgender has nearly doubled in recent years. More generally, young people today clearly feel far freer to explore their gender identity. Exactly. Like left-handed people. And someone commented this the other day about how left-handed people didn't used to exist because they were made to be right-handed. That's why. And as soon as they were no longer being made to be right-handed, boom, loads of lefties. Kittogs. This is such a long fucking article. I'm sorry, I'm so bored. Okay. Oh, hang on. So this is really an issue of our time. So far we've made an absolute hames of discussing it. I agree with you there. The only comfort being that in other countries it's even worse. It's not too late to have that rational discussion while protecting trans people. It isn't, but it would be nice if we knew how to do it. And I don't think we do know how to do it. That's the problem. Welcome, I'm just catching up with chat here. Welcome SM777 Hero. J.K. Rowling is seriously one of the most annoying transphobes. She thinks she's heroic being transphobic. Yeah. And that's what I was saying to my dad as well. Cause like my dad would have bought me all the Harry Potter books when I was young and stuff. And I was saying that, like, it's just disappointing what she uses her platform for. And she's one of the main purveyors and pushers of this. Oh, we can't have transgender people playing women's sports. And it's, excuse me, it's not people who menstruate, it's women who menstruate. I also don't love... First of all, I hate when people say females. It's incorrect grammatically. A female what? I hate when people say females. Oh, these females are doing this. Women is fine, but also people is fine. Like, I just don't get it. Like, people who menstruate, it doesn't bother me. I'm a person who menstruates. You know what I mean? Thank you for gifting subs, Matthew. Welcome, Tylog. It is going well. So, yeah. So, I guess the sport thing. I'm not trans, I will never fully understand it, but I can respect my fellow humans and use the pronouns they want. Why can't everyone else just let people alone be themselves? Yeah, I mean, that's it really. Like, I don't understand why people give a fuck. You know what I mean? I don't understand why people spend so much fucking time thinking about what other people are doing in private. Do you know? But what I was saying to my dad was, when he was asking about, because he was like, I just want to understand and I want to know, like, what your thoughts are on it as a woman who plays sport. And I was like, well, first of all, my first observation is that no one ever gives a fuck about trans men in sport. Actually, first of all, no one gives a fuck about any transgender people in sport unless they're good at it. If they're not good at it, no one gives a fuck. It's only when they start winning that people go, oh, hang on. That's not fair. And it seems that the majority of this debate is around trans women. And I think that that is sexist, because I think that it is predicated on the idea that men are bigger and better. And that if you transition, if you're born a man and you transition to a woman, that you have some sort of, like, you're automatically going to beat everyone at whatever sport you choose because men are better. And I think that's sexist. And obviously it's transphobic and all that other stuff as well. But that's where, I think that's where it's rooted in sexism. Because that's not necessarily the case. Like, there are obviously going to be people who transition who are sporty and people who aren't. And again, as I said, no one gives a fuck about transgender people in sport that aren't any good at it. Then furthermore, I think the whole debate about transgender athletes in sport, and this isn't my original thought, it's something that I saw on Instagram. There's a transgender creator, I cannot remember the name of the account, sorry, that I follow, and there was like a debate had, and he was talking to someone and explained it in a way that I was like, I really understand and agree with this. So the way that it was explained was that, like, transgender athletes or transgender people, they're going through a very intense transition and process. So transgender women will have a cocktail of drugs, essentially. Like, some of that will block testosterone, so they won't have this thing of, they'll have way too much testosterone. It blocks their testosterone. Then they're also have been given things like estrogen and presumably the other one, oh god, I don't know what the other one's called. The other one, the other one's in birth control, progesterone. They're given that, and then they're obviously going through a massive physical change, massive hormonal change. And so the argument is that actually they're not at a biological advantage at all, especially the longer that they've been transitioning. Their that it's nullified. And in fact, you could argue that it's the other direction, because they're having to train and play and be competitive while really having like a hormonal roller coaster. And also, nobody ever takes into account the sport. It's just this sort of like really vague argument. Sorry, I'm just catching up on chat. For the most part, men don't care about women's sport. Oh. Are you fucking preaching or what? Preaching the fucking choir? You're dead fucking right. Men don't give a fuck about women's sport. If you talk about women's sport, they'll all be like, oh, shouldn't, who gives a fuck about soccer? They don't think the women should be paid the same. They don't think as many people watch the women. Blah, 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 blah. There's always a fucking thing, an argument being had about how women's sports are inferior to men's sports. Yeah, you're exactly right. So most people don't give a fuck about women's sport until they get to have an argument about a borderline transphobic argument about it. I can't believe there are people supporting transphobia personalities like Blair White. It's so bizarre. Blair White is a transgender person, as far as I'm aware. And it's awful that she is transphobic herself. And then people follow her and are like, well, here you go. Like, it's fine because she's also transgender and she's just spitting facts. Awful. It really reminds me of like performing for your master, because she really wants the conservative internet to love her, so she panders to them so fucking hard. And the funny thing is, like, as soon as she is no longer beneficial to them, they will drop her like a hot potato because she doesn't fit in with them. What are your thoughts on biological male puberty being an advantage? That's a point I've heard raised and find it hard to argue against. That's what I'm saying. Is that what are your thoughts on biological? I don't really know what you mean specifically by male puberty being an advantage, but if you mean the fact that they've got testosterone in their body, that's what I'm talking about, in that they are put on blockers and put on a massive swing of hormones the other direction. Also, it's interesting though that that argument is even brought up, because I noticed that the same people that are on the side of the argument where they're saying transgender athletes shouldn't compete are also saying people shouldn't transition before puberty. So it's like, okay, so can we win? No. Okay, so things like bone density, lung capacity, I guess that those would only factor in certain sports. So like, we're having this really vague debate about all sports, and not every sport relies on physical attributes. And also, again, it's based on the assumption that men are physically better than women. That's what it's based on. And I don't agree with that at all. I know many men that I would absolutely murder in a fight. Not all of them, quite a lot of them. And I know many men that I would be faster than. That's just assuming that men are physically better than women. And I know that that's like not what you're saying, but it's what the argument is saying. What that argument is saying is that automatically men that have gone through puberty are bigger and better and faster and stronger than all women. And that's not the case. It depends on the sport as well. I also think that this is so... again, this only comes up when transgender athletes are good at the sport. So sorry, you're talking about the case of the trans swimmer. Yeah. So the only reason people are talking about that is because that swimmer is good at swimming. No one gives a shit about transgender athletes that aren't good at the sport that they choose. Like Laurel Hubbard I don't think she made headlines until she won something. No one gives a shit before that, because she wasn't winning anything. She's a weightlifter, as far as I'm aware. And the funny thing is, again, this debate is all fucking around people that are born men that transition into women. Why does nobody care about the other direction? Why is nobody talking about, not that I'm saying I want them to talk about it, but I'm just hypothetically, I'm saying, why does nobody care about people who were born, like women who transition into men? Because the assumption is that men are bigger, better, stronger. That's what it is. That's what it's predicated on. The whole argument's predicated on that. So like the deal with the trans swimmer, she's like a head taller than all the other swimmers and broke a few world records. It's not just that she was good at swimming. She was just an okay swimmer had she been on the men's side. Well, like, how would you know that? Because she never competed as a man. So that's the thing. Kirk, thank you for bringing this up, because it was something I wanted to say and I totally forgot about it. Michael Phelps. They should have banned Michael Phelps for his bone structure and massive lungs. He's a good example, because the one thing I wanted to say about this is that the entire debate around allowing trans women into women's sports is you're saying that they can't play, right? You're saying, I don't think they should play because it's not fair. If that's the case, then you have to define what a woman is. This is the discussion, the debate that I was watching on Instagram. You have to define then, in order to exclude people from women's sports, you need to define what a woman is. And this is where we get into trouble, because it's going to be majority of men defining what they believe a woman is. And these arbitrary fucking rules have already ruled out more cis women from sport than they have transgender women. Caster Semenya is the name that comes to mind, but I think there is at least 5 women that were ruled out for either having too much testosterone or too much whatever, too much naturally occurring testosterone. And that's not fair, especially not when you look at someone like Michael Phelps. I'm pretty sure it's Michael Phelps, the swimmer, who has a naturally occurring advantage where he doesn't build up lactic acid. Huge advantage. That's a huge advantage in a sport. He can surely go for way longer than everyone else. But he's not being banned from competing. So, but yet women are being banned from competing because they have an above normal amount of naturally occurring testosterone. So, I didn't mean to change that. How do I do that now? There we go. Still getting used to my keyboard switches. So yeah, anyway. Look, I think it's a really contentious debate in terms of women's sports. I understand both sides. I err on the side of that they should be allowed to compete, because personally I think that taking sport away from somebody is, if they're into it, it would be fucking awful thing to do. And I also think that it's like currently not a huge issue. It seems to be like very individual cases. I think if we got to a stage where there was loads of transgender athletes, maybe we should just do a transgender category. And then we wouldn't have to have this fucking debate. And we wouldn't have to, argue about the validity of different athletes. And we wouldn't have to rule out women based on too much testosterone, surely. Although that will still happen realistically. And that's part of the problem. It's that there's a fucking group somewhere of men deciding what makes a woman. You can't be bigger than this, or you can't be bigger than that. You can't have this hormone, you can't have that. Which is only going to hurt cis female athletes way more. And I think it's really short-sighted not to see that. Sorry, I'm just catching up with the chat here. I read somewhere it's like 3 total athletes, so it's not a big deal. Yeah. They test testosterone levels in all professional athletes and then the Olympics. Yes. Well, I don't think they should, though. Sorry. Yes, they do, because I presume you can just inject yourself with testosterone to cheat. But I'm pretty sure that men don't have such an arbitrarily low, like no men have been excluded for too high naturally occurring testosterone. Although I wonder, can you tell? Well, no, you must be able to tell because they said Castor Semenya's testosterone was naturally occurring. But anyway, yeah, I just don't like the fact that this is considered a debate. I think, I sent a tweet. Someone was like, we should be allowed to have a debate. And I said, there's no debate that questions the validity of someone's existence. Jan. And she goes, nobody's validity of existence was questioned. And now that I've listened to that, I'm like, I'm sorry. So you think calling all transgender people sex offenders is not questioning somebody's? Where is it? Oh, would it be in my replies, would it? Tweets and replies. I muted it because there was too many knobs. Let me see if I can find the tweet. That's pretty funny. Belfast implies the existence of a Bell Slow. That's pretty funny, frankly. Okay, what if I go to notifications? I go to mentions. I wonder if I scroll down here. God damn it. I don't know where I find this. Because I muted it. When the swimmer in question transitioned, her times went down by 7 to 8%. Presumably because she lost weight, which would make sense. It's never a debate. It's just a speaking opportunity for transphobes to advertise their talking points and further their agenda. That's why trans folk and allies just don't want to entertain bad faith debates. Abso-fucking-lutely. Couldn't agree with that more. Let me see if I can find this tweet. Oh, look at this actually. Joe Duffy's most recent Twitter like, and the only one in over 3 months. I will not be reduced to a body with a vagina or a cervix while biological males are celebrated as women. So the only one that he liked was a transphobic tweet. I can see that like has now been unliked. That's that so. This person and. David, do you have anything to say about Lynn Boylan, an elected representative endorsing violence against women? Or is it just the Irish tradition of policing the opinions of the women and their bodies you're going for? Lynn Boylan's a lefty. So she liked a tweet that said turf cutter. Oh, because that's a turf cutter. TURF. That's stupid, but kind of funny. Also, it's clearly a joke. Also, she just liked a tweet. Like, she's not endorsing violence. Jesus Christ. Relax. So it must be around then that I tweeted this. No, I don't know how to find it. It's probably been hidden. Is it? Here we go. There is no respectful discussion because somebody tweeted in the context. So this was in the context of increasing transphobic and homophobic attacks. The Liveline conversation is incredibly irresponsible. We stand with trans people today, and every day the fight for equality continues. And then somebody tweeted, I'm stunned by your attempt to shut down respectful discussion on this topic. Respectful discussion where the guy called every single transgender person a rapist. Interesting. I've just read your submission to the Committee on Gender Equality, and you yourselves state that there must be free exchange of information and ideas. Doesn't include calling every transgender person a rapist, Colette. You also acknowledge concerns about women's rights. And I said, there is no respectful discussion that questions the validity of someone's existence, Colette. And frankly, that didn't go hard enough because I hadn't listened to the fucking clip yet. Like, if I was sending that now, it'd be much fucking stronger tweet, because there is no respectful discussion that claims that every single person in a marginalised group is a rapist, Colette, is what I'd say. Then someone says, no one is invalidating anyone's existence, but no one is compelled to affirm someone else's delusions either, which is invalidating somebody's, saying that they're delusional. Saying transgender people are delusional is fucking compelled to affirm their is fucking invalidating their existence. Let's just have a civil debate. My position is that you're a mentally ill liar who poses a constant physical threat to me and people I care about, and nothing short of removing you completely from my society will adequately remedy that. Okay? Now it's your turn. That's funny. That's so true. I don't even know about the NWCI, but Helen Joyce, a woman who you had an event to support recently, wants to reduce the number of trans people. Holy fuck. And thinks that every trans person is a problem to the sane world. Do you support those views, and is that questioning someone's validity? It's definitely questioning someone's validity. Oh, hang on, sorry, that was a reply to Colette. No one questioned the validity of anyone's existence. The focus was that the NWCI ejected a woman and barred others from the AGM today. So, in the article, it just said that they got barred from the AGM for protesting. So, it didn't say it was because they were women. And I'd bet any fucking money that they were acting poorly and being aggressive, because they were ejected for protesting. So the manner in which they protested has not been communicated. You're misrepresenting what Helen said. Here's the context. I'm not representing anything, but this Helen Joyce. In the meantime, we try to get that means reducing or keeping down the number of people who transition, and that's for two reasons. One of them is that every one of these people is a person who's been damaged. But the second one is every one of these people is basically a huge problem to the sane world. Yeah, I'm not reading the rest of that. That person can fuck herself. That's not context, it's an out-of-context passage. You suggest she wants to eradicate trans people. My understanding of her position is that she advocates against unquestioning affirmation and self-ID. This is just a summation of it. Let's just have a civil debate. My position is that you're a mentally ill liar. And you pose a threat to me. And I think you should be removed from society. Now it's your turn. Excuse me. Actually, sorry, there's a very interesting chat there. First time chat from Hiddening. If women had the same support system / money / investment at a young age regarding sports, I think they would be able to compete with men in most sports. That's very interesting. That's a very interesting take. Because yeah, no one gives a fuck about women's sports until they get to use it to be transphobic. You're right, Tylog. Yes, fucking Twitter is just a lot of arguing with strangers. LeBron James should be banned from sports. He's too tall, which gives an unfair advantage from other shorter players who are not given a fair chance to compete. Yeah. It's not fair. The other basketballers aren't as tall. Like, there should be a height limit on basketballers just to even the playing field and make it fair. Oh, Tylo. Thank you, Tylo. So I take it the G is silent. Or is it Tylo G? I think what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go get a cup of tea, take a pee. And then when we come back, what would you like to do? Would you like to watch some stuff? Or would you like to play PlayStation? I was thinking what I would do is play PlayStation, but let you guys choose what game I want to play. Because I re-downloaded Farming Simulator. Because loads of people were talking about Farming Simulator after my last YouTube video. And I could do that. You could talk me through it. Or I could play Skyrim. I've got Skyrim. Or Elden Ring. Or Fall Guys. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you for sticking around as long as you have. Enjoy work. You're playing Elder Scrolls Online, Fumi. Yeah, I don't play Elder Scrolls Online. I only play I've only just started playing Skyrim. You've been playing Assassin's Creed. Kirks, you are a mod. Is there any chance you could put a poll up? And we'll go Skyrim, Elden Ring. I put the 4 in. Skyrim, Elden Ring, Fall Guys, or what was the 4th one? Farming Simulator. I don't even know if I want to play Farming Simulator, but I got it in case other people want me to play it. Yeah, Skyrim. I kind of been thinking about Skyrim since I played it last. I've been like, I want to do that again. Millie, can you shut up, please? I'm trying to stream. Good girl. I was thinking actually I need to get up off my arse and go more places and do more things for YouTube videos and for streams as well. So I'm going to do a bit of research and see what's on this week and go to some stuff. I didn't go to Taste last week because I was kind of like, I've kind of got into the habit of being in the house Monday to Friday, being like, I have to edit. But actually I should be out filming more exciting stuff than me just sitting in my house, my arse. Patty, I'm glad I had the day off. I really enjoyed this conversation. It's very enlightening. Thank you so much, Patty. I need someone to help me figure out why I can't multiplayer with you. I have no idea, Mark. I wonder, do you have a PS5? I don't know. Terry Gamer managed it and someone else managed it the other day as well. It wasn't you, Kirks, was it? It was someone else. It was one of the regulars. Elden Ring. Tylo G. I can't remember how I found you. I think I found you from a comment about Trisha and H3. No way, really. I don't know how really to get people to my Twitch. Do you know? I was actually trying to think about it and trying to think how I could drive more people to my Twitch, and I don't actually know how to do it. Did a 5-minute poll there should be done by when you're back from tea. Perfect. TikTok clips. Yeah, a lot of people say TikTok clips, but I just don't know if... Does it drive it over? Or not? Networking. Yeah. Thinking of proposing a collab with the other Try streamers, and then I don't really know any other Irish streamers. Maybe I just need to do a bit of research. I found your Twitch while watching your gaming YouTube videos. I had hoped that would happen when I put up my newest gaming video. You should try do a multiplayer game with Fox and others. Yeah, I was thinking of trying to organise that. And yes, the first one was a farm simulator. I love so much. I didn't. I fucking cried. Oh. So Elden Ring is currently winning in the poll. So get your votes in. Oh, Louise, me and Blind Boy. Does Blind Boy stream? I actually didn't realise that. I must watch him. I knew he had a podcast. Is it the podcast he streams? Or no, he streams gameplay, actually. I think I did see a clip of him gaming at one point. So maybe I did know it. I just didn't internalise the information. Do you know Call Me Kevin? I do not. No one voted for Farming Simulator. That's totally fine. One person did, but that's fine. Because I just wanted to give you the option. Sure, I paid €60 for it back in the day, and I just wanted to see, if I get my money's worth. He streams music, composing live. Oh yeah, okay. Right. I'm gonna go get a cup of tea. Oh, Skyrim has now overtaken Elden Ring. So if that upsets you, get your votes in. I presume Kirk's limited it to 1 vote per person. But yeah, Skyrim currently winning. Right, I'm going to go get a cup of tea. Everyone else go get your go tea and come back. And you didn't allow buying votes, Kirk's nice. Right. Gives 5 minutes to pee and get some tea. And then I'll be back. And I'll just make sure the PlayStation's on as well while I'm downstairs. And then it's looking like we're going to play Skyrim when I get back. So I haven't set up... Have I set up? Hang on, I haven't set up my BRB screen. I'm still here now. Don't panic. I'm just trying to get... Trying to get my BRB screen set up. There we go. Yes. Okay. Okay, back in 5 minutes. And I'm going to run a ad break as well so that they stop running for people who are new. Okay, see you in 5.